Hello everyone and welcome to another very nice game from round 6 of the Tata Steel Chess Tournament 2021 between Jorden van Foreest and David Anton Guijarro, and it's a very long theoretical line, so we're gonna skip most of the opening, and that being said, let's dive straight into it. And also I have prepared the standings for you, so we're gonna check that out as well to see what's happening after 6 rounds. So Van Foreest opens with e4. We have e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, and bishop to b5. We have the Ruy Lopez on the board and a6. Guijarro goes for the Morphy defense. We have bishop to a4 and knight to f6. We have castles and bishop to e7. So this is all very standard stuff. We've seen this a million times. d3 and b5, pushing the bishop back, bishop to b3 and d6. And the white plays c3, makes a room on c2 for the bishop. Also will help if this pawn needs to be pushed to d4. We have castles by black and now h3, taking away the g4 square from black's pieces. We have h6 and now a4, and we reach the position that was played in 2020 last year in Prague Masters between Alireza Firouzja and Nikita Vityugov that ended in a draw, but in that game bishop to b7 was played. However, in this game we have bishop to d7, and this bishop to d7 move shows that Guijarro definitely came prepared for this line, as this is the top move recommended by the engine. And this is basically where our game takes a new turn, so as of move 10 we have a completely new game. We have bishop to c2 by Van Foreest and now b4, challenging the center here. Of course, if white captures, then you will no longer have support for your d4 push, so you're not interested in that. We have knight b to d2, preparing the standard rook e1, knight f1, knight g3 move. Rook to e8, preparing to shift the bishop over to f8, so the rook gains control of the center. We have a5 by white, and now bishop to f8. It seems like maybe a dangerous move, because maybe the black could pick off the pawn, but for the moment, as you can see, it's not all that possible. You can't even push the c pawn to go after it, so it is very safe there. Rook to e1 and now rook to b8. Preparing to capture will open up the b file, and white decides to strike in the center. We have d4, b captures on c3, b captures, e captures, and c captures. And now the tension in the center has been resolved, and white keeps his very nice center here. And knight to b4. By black going after the bishop on c2, and of course you do not want to trade bishop for knight here, so bishop back to b1 looks weird, putting all of your pieces on starting squares, but the bishop is actually very nice here, controlling all of the squares the knight can move to, and just being placed on this long diagonal. So g6, Guijarro wants to shift the bishop over to g7, and now rook to a3. The rook on a3 is an excellently placed rook, so a very nice rook lift. You're guarding a lot of stuff here, and also you can just shift it wherever. To b3, you could double up rooks on e3. Maybe if the knight moves, you can even go to g3 for some attacking purposes, all depending on what black plays. That did not happen. We have bishop to g7. Black continues to put the bishop on a better diagonal, and now knight to f1. White continues the remaneuvering, and black says, okay, I definitely have to do something. So black decides to trade pieces by also going for a very nice rook lift. Rook to b5 with the idea of guarding the h5 square. So this knight is coming to g3, and then black wants to trade off those knights with knight to h5. So knight g3 and knight to h5 right away. We have knight captures and rook captures on h5. And now maybe you could run into some trouble if this c6 pawn, if this pawn gets to c6, so maybe the a5 pawn becomes a little bit weak. So here Van Foreest takes care of that by playing d5. So grabs more space in the center, also cuts off the rook here. We have c5 by black, now creating a wonderful passed pawn here, and now bishop to f4. You could go for d captures on c6 en passant, but white says that he prefers the firm grip on the position, and that this pawn will not be an issue. So bishop to f4 goes after the d6 pawn that's undefended, and now bishop to b2. Now attacking white's rook here. We have rook a to e3 now, doubling up here. Rook to b3 is very dangerous. Then you run into some ideas like bishop to a4, and then it's just well, bad for you. So instead, after this bishop to b2, the rooks are doubled up on the e file, and now queen to f6. Black also needs to defend now. attacks the bishop on f4, bishop to g3, and now black starts pushing his pass pawn, c4. And with the bishop guarding these two squares, could be very dangerous for white. So queen to e2, here Van Foreest prepares this e5 push, and bishop to b5 now, preparing c3, which would also come with an attack on the bishop, but white is maybe just a little bit faster here. Here we have e5. Also very interesting is bishop captures on d6, but we're not going to go into it as there are so many interesting lines that we're going to have to cover in this game. So we have e5 here, just attacking the black queen, and now bishop captures on e5. We have knight captures on e5, d captures on e5, and bishop captures on e5. And now you can see that everything has been traded off. The material is equal, but the problem is, what can black do here? The problem is you cannot move the queen. If you move the queen, then the problem is, well, bishop to a1. You just move the bishop, you keep control of this diagonal, you're threatening rook captures here, which would end in checkmate. There's nothing that can be done here. Even though the bishop guards here, you cannot allow a triple capture here because the bishop covers this, and then of course at the end of that, rook to h8 will be checkmate. So here you would have to play rook captures on e3. But again, after queen captures on e3, not much better. The threat is queen d4, followed by some checkmates here, and it's very hard to prevent this. You cannot do anything. If you capture with the rook to prevent queen d4, then you allow queen captures on h6, again with mate threats. So black is completely busted here. So unfortunately for David Anton, you have to capture on e5, and he does so with the rook. Rook captures on e5, we have rook captures on e5, and now he just continues pushing the pawn. You cannot trade further. If captures, 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 and captures, it's a terrible, terrible endgame for black. White is just winning here, but we're gonna reach a very similar position later on, so we're gonna show why. So here c3, just continuing to push the pass pawn, and now comes queen to e3, vacating the c2 square and actually allowing the c2 move. And here we reach the position where now black needs to say, okay, we cannot allow this to go any further. We have to trade everything here. Captures, 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 and now c2 still doesn't work. If you go c2, now we reach a similar position. For example, captures, captures, and d6, and the white is completely winning here. There's nothing you can do. If you attack with the bishop, then just the rook attacks bishop, pushing, pushing. And if king to f8, then the even nicer rook captures on b5. Captures, and the a pawn is winning now. There's, of course, nothing you can do here. Also comes with check. So what you would have to do here, after all these trades in the center, you cannot go for c2, but you can play f6, and then maybe black can continue fighting, getting his king a little bit closer to the action, but it's still very unlikely for black to be able to survive this. Of course, with perfect play, anything is possible. But after queen to e3, Guijarro said, all right, we're going to play c2 because this is good for black, but it doesn't appear to be all that great, because here there is one move that really is great for white, and of course Van Foreest finds it. It's rook captures on h5. And now the thing is, you cannot capture on b1 like an in-between move, because rook captures on b1, and then the knight is also attacked. Captures, captures, and this is just a winning position for white. So instead, after rook captures on h5, we have g captures on h5, and now comes bishop captures on c2. This is what Van Foreest played. There was an even crazier line, queen to d2, where you just allow this capture, and after rook captures, then you're attacking the knight, and after knight to d3, you capture with the rook on b5, captures, captures, and now again you have a winning position for white. For example, queen a1 check, you're going to have to play king h2, captures here, just a d6, and now black queen will have to block, but it's not a problem. d7, and you're just gonna have a very easy time winning this position. If king f8, of course, just queen d6 check, the king has to move, and then it's very, very simple. So not what was played, but after g captures on h5, we have the immediate bishop captures on c2 by Van Foreest, and this allows David Anton some counterplay. He plays knight captures on c2 with a nice fork here, and now queen to e5, saying, okay, we trade queens here, otherwise I'm just gonna have to give up a rook. So king to g7, defending the queen. Of course, you want white to capture so you can improve the activity of your king. And now rook to e4. And here we reach the position where you have to trade captures, and then black fights. King f6 attacks the rook. Whatever rook captures, king is gonna go back. But you still have 2 pieces for the rook, so black can still fight this. However, after rook to e4. David Anton played bishop to d3, challenged the rook here, but this move, of course, completely blunders the game, and I'm sure you can see it, but just in case, feel free to pause the video and find the winning move for David Anton while I give you a couple of seconds. So, for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting the, well, piece grab in 2 moves. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it's queen to g3 with check. This is what Van Foreest played, and it was in this position that David Anton resigned the game. I haven't checked the time at the end of the game, so I'm going to do that now to see how David Anton was doing. It's some 3 moves before time control, and he still had some 3 minutes and 30 seconds on the clock. So it's not as if he were, let's say, down to a few seconds. He did have time to spot this, but, you know, if no one ever blundered it, there would be no point in playing chess. So after queen to g3, he resigned, and an excellent win for Van Foreest, who climbs up the ladder. So here, of course, if you move the king, just queen captures, and it's a completely winning game for white. There's absolutely nothing to do here. The knight is being attacked, you're down the exchange, the d pawn is going to go up the board, so you're losing on all fronts. So yeah, after queen to g3 check, David Anton resigned, and like I said, we are going to show the standings now. So let's check that out. I don't know why they're not showing. Let me just load that. That's why it's saved in a different format. There we go. So these are the standings after 6 rounds. Let me just fix that. There we go. So after 6 rounds, the leader of the tournament, sole leader Nils Grandelius, who is playing just a phenomenal tournament. If he can keep playing at this rate, it's going to be probably his best tournament ever. Then we have, with 3.5 points, a lot of people: Pentala Harikrishna, Jorden Van Foreest, Fabiano Caruana, Magnus Carlsen, Anish Giri, and Alireza Firuja. With 3 out of 6, Andrei Zipenko and Radoslav Wojtaszek. With 2.5, Jan Krzysztof Duda, Maxim Vachier-Lagrave, and Arjan Tari. With 2 points, David Anton Guijarro after this loss, and still in last place with 1.5 out of 6, Alexander Donchenko. So those were the standings, and hope you guys enjoyed the game. Really a wild one, could have gone either way, but in the end, Van Foreest prevailed. So yeah, we'll see what happens in round 7. I would like to thank Alima Kasenova, Javier Soler, Gary Kiran, Alan Ferns, and Bhupendra Sojitra for contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of round 7 of the Tata Steel, checking up on your wonderful suggestions, and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all, I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your weekend.